go. Ooh, that was quite loud. Let's try that again. Can everyone hear me? Woo. Do a little woo. Lovely, thanks for that. Okay, hi everyone. It is so amazing to see so many people here in person and in virtually. Little wave to the camera. I'm Beth Mitchell. My pronouns are she, her, and I'm the lead organiser of this event. I'm just going to do a bit of housekeeping and then a little introduction to the event, and then we'll turn to our panel discussion. So, housekeeping-wise, I just want to say a big thank you to Metrics for hosting us. They have been so great in accommodating us. They're amazing. Also, just toilets-wise, we have one loo, which is downstairs, which is just by the bar. It is fully accessible. Fire exits-wise, there is not a fire alarm or fire drill planned tonight, so if the fire alarm goes, it is a fire. So please leave the building. We have two fire exits, just the door which you came in or that one just there. So please go to your nearest exit. And the fire assembly point is Guildhall Square, which is just out there. And I'm obviously aware we are still in COVID times, so if you do feel comfortable, more comfortable wearing a mask, we absolutely respect that and absolutely do that. So I'm just going to do a little introduction for the event. So today is obviously International Women's Day. It's a day for us to celebrate women and female identifying people all around the world. But it's also a day for us to examine where we are with feminism and what we can do next. March also marks a year since Sarah Everard went missing, later found killed by the ex-police officer Wayne Couzens. As I'm sure you're all aware, and many probably participated in, nationwide vigils were held throughout the country alongside outcries for more to be done to protect women. Sarah's death was devastating, and it highlighted the systemic nature of male violence against women. However, it also highlighted the institutional racism that runs throughout this country, especially in the media, with women of colour receiving far less media attention than white women like Sarah Everard. And that's not to take away from Sarah's case at all, but it's to highlight how the media chooses to report white women who go missing much more than women of colour. Within that, there's also less media attention on disabled women, older women, LGBTQ plus people, and sex workers. Every woman who is murdered by a man should be grieved. And the outrage that is given to a white woman who is murdered should be given to every single woman. So, in the years since Sarah Everard was murdered, at least 125 women have lost their lives to male violence. This is the statistic recorded by the Counting Dead Women Project, which also recorded that in the last decade, a woman was killed by a man every 3 days. Domestic violence figures are no better. 1 in 4 women are recorded to suffer from domestic violence in their lives. To put that into context, that's about 30 women in this room likely to suffer from domestic violence. To put it into further context, Southampton has been recorded to be the second highest in the country for sexual offences. And between 2020 and 2021, there was an 18% increase in violent and sexual offences in Southampton. £150,000 has been promised to tackle this issue, and it will be interesting to see how the money will be used, and we will be discussing that in this panel. So my aim in throwing all these statistics at you is to provide context into why events like these are so important. We do this because we want to create conversation create the conversation surrounding women's safety, and to raise awareness, increase engagement, and boost the voices that need to be heard. And I truly believe that listening to those affected by this issue is key in tackling the problem. And that is what we're doing here tonight. So just before I turn to our panel for them to introduce themselves, I want to say that this discussion is meant to be safe and open, and I want everyone to respect that so that the conversation can be as great as it will be. I also just want to provide a trigger warning. We will be discussing sensitive topics, so if you feel that you need to leave the room at any point, that is absolutely fine, and we completely respect that. So, I am going to sit down and let our panel just introduce themselves one by one. So if we go from my left to right, but your guys is right to left. So if we start with Jessica.
Thank you for that. Sorry, am I pressing something?
No, you're fine.
Okay, thank you for that. That was a really warm welcome, thank you. Yeah, my name is Jessica. I've basically been Jessica for the last 4 years. Yeah. Although I knew I wanted to be Jessica at the age of 5, yeah, which was all I will say that was at a time when we only had 2 TV channels, and they used to finish at 11 o'clock, and I'll leave that over there. I'm actually, I work at Spectrum, Centre for Independent Living. I'm a qualified social worker, but please don't hold that against me, okay? And I also originate from Liverpool, which you can probably tell by the profound and cultured accent. And my claim to fame, I suppose, is that I've never had to go and watch Southampton Football Club.
Hi, my name's Lisa Mitchell. I'm a councillor for Portswood Ward in the north of the city. I've been a councillor for around 4 years now. I first got involved in politics around 14 years ago now. When I was younger, I grew up in a family where there was domestic violence. And if you'd indulge me for a second, my favourite woman in the world, my grandma, she used to look out for me a lot. And as I grew a bit older, you know, when you're a kid, you kind of think, you know, my life is how everyone's life is. That's just how things go. And as I got a bit older and I got more politically aware, I realised not everyone had someone like that in their life. And also, growing up, there were sort of some Labour Party politicians around my neck of the woods who also helped me and my family a lot. And I thought, you know, those are the guys that make people like me in my situations and make us feel like we do actually matter. So I decided that I would get involved in politics and, you know, help people make themselves feel like they matter through like providing great housing to people and particularly relevant today, you know, making sure everyone feels safe and happy and they are healthy in the environments they grow up in. I'm really looking forward to the conversation tonight, and it's, you know, great to be on a panel with all women for a change. Thank you.
Hi everyone, I'm Victoria McCarthy and I'm from Yellow Door in Southampton. And my role at Yellow Door is the Domestic Abuse Team Coordinator. I've worked in domestic abuse services for 10 years now. I went to Southampton University and studied criminology and psychology before that, and ended up writing my dissertation on domestic abuse. And it was from doing that and also personal experiences of my own that I thought I really want to work within domestic abuse. So I started in Southampton Women's Aid in an admin role, and then as it happened, it's a very small charity and kind of got a lot of experience within that. And then 3 years ago, we merged in with Yellow Door to bring the domestic abuse team. So yeah, that's me. Thank you.
Hello. Oh, there we go. Hello, everyone. My name is Megan Crook, and I am the Star Project Coordinator at Yellow Door. So Yellow Door is Southampton's domestic and sexual abuse charity. So we provide a range of services for people that have witnessed or experienced sexual or domestic abuse. The STAR Project is our educational outreach programme, so we deliver to young people, children and young people across Southampton and the New Forest in primary schools, secondary schools, colleges, universities and other youth settings. The purpose of that is to kind of start conversations about kind of healthy relationships, recognising abuse in all its forms, kind of talking about consent, what that looks like, what that means, and other kind of themes around those kinds of topics. My background is in primary education, so I did my degree and qualified as a primary school teacher. I only lasted a year. And then teenagers are a lot less scary. And yeah, I also have my own kind of experiences related to domestic and sexual abuse, as I'm sure lots of women here today do. And I just feel like I'm doing something that I feel really passionate about. So yeah, I'm really excited to be here.
We're on one mic today. Good evening, my name's Levi. I'm the chairwoman of an LGBT charity called People's Pride Southampton. So our goal is to run a 2-day Pride event in June this year, And of course, safety is something that we do feel really passionate about. So one example, of course, we're going to be having drinks covers on all the cups that we do give out, just so that they can't be spiked. I'm also really excited to be here this evening, just to bring my own perspective across as a transgender woman to this discussion. And I hope that everyone in the audience today can, of course, just learn from these multiple perspectives that we have this evening. Thank you.
Is this one working? Hello, everyone. My name is Abiola Kingsley Fabrode, very long name. I'm a second-year podiatry student at Southampton University, and I'm also the president of Black Women's Project. And the reason why I wanted to be the president of Black Women's Project was because on Southampton campus, there's not a lot of black women there, and we're all dotted around and feel a bit lonely sometimes. And then coming together in a place where we'll go through the same thing is just really important, and that's the reason why I wanted to do it. And as everyone has said, women, we go through a lot that people do not give us credit for. And we have to experience things that really we shouldn't just because of our gender. And I've experienced a lot of it recently, not just because of who I am as a woman, but also because of my colour. So I'm really excited to be here today and educate and just talk about what it's like being a black woman in the UK and how I've navigated that to make myself feel safe, and what you guys can do as well to keep yourself safe, because women gotta look after each other here.
Hi everyone, my name's Lizzie Reed. I am a lecturer in sociology at Southampton. My specialist subject is sexuality and gender, and that's what I research, that's what I care about, that's the stuff that kind of gets me excited. I came to it through being an undergrad and getting really involved in the Feminist Society at my university, which was Lancaster, some time ago. So it's really lovely to be at an event like this with so many students involved and ex-students and various connections there, and seeing this happening again for people. And I would say one of my hobbies at work is agitating for making queer people visible within the university and standing up for the variously marginalised people in our community in ways that don't always happen in the academy. So I'm talking maybe from a slightly different perspective than some of the people on the panel here, but hopefully I've got something to contribute to.
Great. Yeah, that's fab. So that's our panel. So I'm just going to kick off the panel discussion. So our first question revolves around what we're talking about with Southampton and all the reportings and the initiatives that they're bringing in. So one of the initiatives Southampton's bringing in is a focus on education. They've said they have started plans to improve education and information on women's safety. So my question to the panel is, I want to ask whether you think there is enough education on women's safety, and if not, what topics you think need to be taught. So Meg, I want to go to you first. You've talked about your work on the STAR project, and I want to talk to you about that, but also Lads Chat. So maybe if you could tell us what Lads Chat is to start off with, and then kind of your experience with working in schools, and if you think there is enough education going on.
Yeah, of course. So Lad Chat is our kind of project specifically for groups of boys. So we cover kind of topics like kind of peer pressure, consent, pornography, those kinds of things. And I think it's what I have found really helpful when we're working with groups of boys is you have to kind of approach it from an angle of how can they help. And I think that's really important, because if you go in kind of on the attack or kind of accusing them of being the problem kind of straight away, they kind of switch off. So we talk a lot about being kind of an active bystander, kind of, you know, the way that boys may think about women and why that is. So where are they getting those kinds of ideas from? Things like pornography and that kind of thing. We talk very openly about what is portrayed in porn is not kind of normal sex. Not every girl and woman will want to do the things that they might think that they want to. And yeah, just kind of having really kind of open and honest discussions with them. We've also partnered up with the Saints Foundation, and we've kind of developed a programme, Vicky, you were involved in that as well, to kind of teach about violence against women and girls from primary school. So talking about things like misogyny, because those messages start really young. I mean, from the minute we think about the toys that boys play with versus the toys that girls play with. You know, we're already kind of creating that sort of difference from a very early age. So yeah, I just think kind of going in with an open mind, really putting the focus on what they can do to help and to change things, because actually that's what's going to be really important, boys and men getting on board and helping us change things. So yeah.
Yeah, no, 100%. And Lizzie, if I can turn to you, you do a lot of work on representations in media and how that's formed like in identity making. So I'd like to ask kind of within your research, within your work, what you've come across, kind of the relationships between men and women and how kind of the disparity between them and how women are treated, just kind of how that is viewed, and do you think that's a positive representation or do you think there's more that needs to be done?
That's a lovely question, and I think I could probably talk about this for the rest of the night, so I'll try not to. I'm going to pick up on the last bit you said about whether it's a positive representation, because I always think that's a question we kind of ask ourselves a lot when we're watching things. And my response is always there's no such thing as positive or negative representations. There's just representations we do things with. So do we see a lot of violence against women on TV? Probably less so than we did 10, 20, 30 years ago. Does that mean that it has declined at the kind of comparable level in society? No, it doesn't. There's a big gap between those things. But what we might see is a diversity of representations of women doing different types of things, having different types of relationships, even building solidarity between women to look after one another, to share knowledge, to protect, to educate, to share different kinds of values. And if we had more of those types of representations, we can sometimes see people find that they are really helpful for imagining who they might reach out and meet, for knowing that there are communities of people out there like them, for understanding that there are all kinds of women in the world with all kinds of experiences, and that there are lots of different ways of relating to people around us. So maybe is my answer.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a thing. There's no kind of, yeah, I completely agree, the positive and the negative. There's no really right and wrong answer, because it's such a, like you said, you could talk about it the entire evening. It's a whole conversation to have. I think with that representation, there's a huge kind of debate, especially with a lot of TV series at the moment, the representation of some kind of violent representations, like to do with domestic abuse, to do with rape, and whether it's a good idea to show those scenes because, you know, it's something that happens in life, people should be taught about it, or if showing those scenes is actually harmful in its own way. And I don't know what you think about that, if you have an opinion on it at all.
I think that's a really interesting conversation, and probably picks up on what you were saying about pornography as well, and those kind of representations, and that sometimes quite polarised debate where people say, well, if there is a representation of any kind of violence, sexual violence, gender violence, it's inherently damaging. And actually, sometimes what we can be talking about is how can we help people respond to things they're seeing. We're always going to see these types of images. We're always perhaps going to encounter those things in our lives. So how can we talk to people about how we might respond to them? There's also that element of, so as a bit of a woolly sociologist, I think everything should be permitted and maybe we just need to talk about it more. So I'm going to give you lots of these kind of answers. But maybe sometimes seeing those things can help people work through experiences. There's a lot of evidence that people seek out and watch pornography, which is violent and very different than what they would like to enjoy sexually, because it can be a way to work through an anxiety about some types of sex. It can be a way to experiment and understand taboos that maybe you've come against or you recognise exist. There are obviously lots of politics involved in the making and distribution of that pornography. But so much of that, I think, is about how we might respond to it individually and as a society. So are these images inherently damaging? Probably not. Do we all have the tools to respond to them? Probably not. And that might be another place where those kind of questions of education come back in really importantly.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's the thing. If you're having those representations, you definitely also need the education around it. So we make sure that when people are receiving those things, they know how to deal with it. That's great, thank you. So I'm just going to move on to our next question. So In our next question, I'd like to kind of look at the intersections of women's safety, because obviously, me talking as a white, cis, able-bodied woman, I have a very individual and privileged perspective. So I'd love to get your thoughts on how you view your own safety and how it's impacted by your sexuality, gender identity, race and disability. And how within that, if you think enough is being done to combat the problems you face by, like, our local council. So Jessica, I'd like to turn to you if I could. Spectrum have this social model of disability philosophy when they talk about how society needs to change to help disabled people rather than disabled people having to change their lives and adapt to society. I'd love to get your thoughts on how, as a disabled and a trans female, you view your own safety.
Okay. This is really, really interesting because it's been a real journey for me over the past 4 years. Okay. I'll talk about the social model a bit later on, but I just want to talk to you about an incident which happened to me about last year. It was actually. We'd been to a local bar for a meal. It wasn't too far from where we work. It was in Portswood, actually. And it was a really bright, summer's day. And we'd had a great time. We were walking back, and we were with students, and I was with the rest of my female colleagues. So we were all females, walking back. I happened to be with Emma, who's next to me today, and we were at the back of this group, and unbeknown to me, we were being followed by this man, and he came up to me, and he put his hand on my shoulder, and he started to rub my shoulder, and this just sent me into a panic, okay? Now, as I indicated previously, I've been around for a number of years, okay, and I've got very close to a male friend of mine who's never experienced anything like that, but Jessica experienced this for the first time, and I just did not know what to do. I was really scared. He spoke to me. He said, you don't need this cane, because I had my cane with me. And he was rubbing my shoulder. And I freaked out, to be honest with you. I just couldn't handle this at all. And I'm a Scouser, and I couldn't handle this. And so Emma brilliantly stepped in and said, look, this is not acceptable. You can't do this. You can't just come up to people and sort of just, start touching them like that. It's not acceptable. And instead of me supporting Emma and saying, that's right, I'm saying to Emma, no, don't make a fuss. Don't make a fuss, please. Come on, Emma, let's go. Let's go. Please don't make a fuss. And that has really affected me to how I live my life now. For instance, I get taxis to and from work. I won't travel on public transport, It's not just because of trans, okay. I'm blind as well, and I have a severe hearing impairment, so I've got additional factors to consider. But those things make me very, very vulnerable, and I have had to change my life. Jessica is very different, because this male friend who, she was very close to at one time, happened to be sighted. So they lived in a different lifestyle and everything else. But Jessica faces a new lifestyle and living as a trans female in a world where risk is something you have to consider every day. Just even to coming out, when I come out of the office at Spectrum, I can't walk onto the road to pick the transport. I have to hide in the corner and wait for the taxi to come in and collect me, okay? So that's how it's changed me. Would you like me to outline the social model, or do you want me to come back to that?
Yeah, no, absolutely.
All right, okay. Social model is this, basically. And this applies to everybody in this room, okay, not just me, is affected by the social model. Okay, we all belong to different groups, yeah. I identify as a trans female. I also identify as an extreme socialist, yeah. I identify as a Scouser, yeah. So there's lots of things I identify with, okay. And so do we all. We all identify with different groups and all that, okay. So what causes me the problem in my life, or probably will affect all of you in one way or another, is how we live in society that really doesn't accept our individuality, okay, and expects us to conform whatever we're faced with, yeah. So all of us faced three types of barrier, okay. We face what we call institutional barriers, yeah. So it may well be, you can't basically rent a house because you need your partner's permission or something like that. So it's the very institution that causes the barrier. In my case of Jessica would love to go on a cruise, but she can't go on a cruise by herself, okay? She's not allowed. You need to have someone who's sighted with you, okay? So that's one of the barriers I face, which is caused by the institution. But it may well be you can't get insurance, or you can't basically go into a certain area. You need to have somebody with you, whether that's a female or whether it's a male or whatever it may be. So there's all sorts of institutional barriers within society, okay. There's attitudinal barriers. Yeah, people's attitude towards you because you're different. One of the things I struggle with is being patronised. I really have great difficulty with being patronised. There's a lot of patronising things can take place in society, So it's people perceive because you're dressed in a certain way, or you behave in a certain way, or anything like that, okay, that basically you're easy, you're a target or something like that. So it's people's sort of attitudes towards you. And the next thing is like the environmental barriers we face. Yeah, it may be just really poor street lighting. You want to walk through the common, okay, but you can't walk through the common because it's pitch black or something like that, or there's not enough people about. So it's the environment which causes the barriers, okay? You go into a restaurant, they don't have the information you need in a certain format. So the social model applies to everybody. Yeah, it's about us all dealing with those barriers. And if we can overcome those barriers and get society basically to address them, then we can create a more inclusive life for everybody. And that's all I want to say on the subject. Sorry.
That was absolutely fab. Thank you so much for that. There's something I'd like to pick up on, actually. Levi, we talked about this earlier, about you feeling that you couldn't leave the house because you're scared of attack. And I just wonder if you wanted to expand on that.
Absolutely, yeah. So, as a transgender person, and just like Jessica, I have been verbally abused, not physically, thankfully, like Jessica's story there, but being a shy person before then too, it really has set me back in my abilities to go out in the world however I do see fit. So, well, I am sorry, how would you like me to expand on that?
Well, I mean, just talking about your experiences if you want to. But yeah, we were talking earlier about, how you don't feel comfortable kind of leaving the house at points. Sorry, not at points. Because of societal views and how you're affected by them. So kind of just how you view your own safety, and perhaps we could also talk about how that could be changed, how society could change so you could feel more safe?
I see, thank you. So the way that I do see my own safety, unfortunately, it is hanging on by a thread. Transphobic hate crime, it has increased 4 times since 2015. So it doesn't really feel like there is anything currently that is addressing my own issues personally. Of course, being transgender, that is a reason why some people would want to single me out. And that has led to, of course, as I did mention myself, being verbally abused. Personally, I think something that can help with, say, my own confidence and other transgender people's confidence to live life as they do see fit would be if, of course, following the local government receiving so much money, so £1,500, £150,000 from the Home Office, and then also £1,902,000 from the Safer Streets Fund. What I would like to see is that is being used inclusively, so that however sorts of education and any other way that this could be implemented, both in the night economy and throughout the city and schools, it does include people of different ethnicities, people, how they express their gender identity, and just other ways really how we can break the bias, which of course is our theme this year for the International Day of Women.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So just finally for this question, Lisa, I'd love to turn to you. Obviously, you are a Labour councillor. I'd love to get your thoughts on, kind of from the inside, as they say, just how you view the council is acting on women's safety and what you think could be done from that perspective.
I think the first and fundamental thing that could be done, I think there needs to be a lot more women in decision-making positions on the council. I don't think there are enough. And this kind of, I think people when especially when I say it, because I say it a lot, they kind of think, oh, it's very symbolic. She wants women because, it's nice to have women. But actually, these kind of issues that we've talked about don't get raised a lot, or they don't get raised from our perspectives. If I could give an example, when we're talking about cycle lanes, which apparently is very controversial, there were cycle lanes put up a main road, and people said, well, you don't need it put up that main road because people can just cycle through the common. And it's like, well, I'm sorry, but I'm not cycling through the common after dark because I don't feel safe doing so. I'd much rather have a safe path up the road. I am a cyclist myself, so, I now have to kind of take my life into my hands, walking or cycling through the common, or take my life into my hands, cycling on a road with busy cars and, men shouting at me that way. So I think these kind of decisions that are made, and they're not just decisions concerning women or women's safety, it's every single decision that's made about how this city's built, where housing's built, infrastructure has an impact on the way as women we move about the city and our safety. So I think by having women in more positions of power and more women councillors and more women making decisions, these issues can be brought up more often and in a way that suits us. I know there's European cities. Vienna is a good example, where they have a feminist model of urban planning, where they take a lot of these issues into account as they build and grow the city, which is something I'd like to see a lot more in the UK.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that's the thing. It's all about representation, and this is why events like these are so important, because we get to have this discussion with so many different people, but those discussions don't need to just happen here. They need to happen at a higher level where real change can be made, so definitely. So for the next question, I wanted to talk about the impact women's safety has upon mental health, because I feel like that is something that is often ignored. When we're talking about women's safety, when we're receiving all the media that comes with that, that is a lot to receive, especially with the Sarah Everard case, with Ashton Murphy, with Sabina Nessa. There was so much that we were receiving. And that takes a toll. I don't know about you guys, but it took such a toll on my mental health. So I'd love to kind of get your thoughts on that. Abiola, I really wanted to talk to you about Black Women's Project, because Black Women's Project does a lot for mental health. You do your Instagram lives, your wellbeing workshops, and we were talking about that earlier. But I'd love to ask, in uni, because obviously you're a university student, do you feel like there is enough mental health support, particularly for Black women and women of colour? Or is there that gap where something needs to be done?
I think that mental health for Black women it shouldn't be, but it is a really hard thing to tackle, not just for Black women, but for women of colour in general. Because a lot of the things that we experience sadly actually start from home. A lot of things we see and that we are influenced by starts from home. And then sometimes that is also responding back to us in the world as well. And sometimes when we're put in therapy, such as cognitive behavioral therapy, counselling, and you're trying to explain, this is what's going on with me and I don't understand how to navigate this, the person you're speaking to doesn't understand how you feel in a way. And although they've gone through the training of how to tackle situations like that, it's still really hard for them to put themselves in that position and give the right advice, because a lot of the advice that I needed, or especially in my case, has to kind of align with my culture. That is the main thing for me. And I don't know if I'm allowed to say this, I hope I am. But the thing that's taken a toll on my mental health at the moment with women's safety is actually the ebony fetish. Just because I work in bar part-time, and the men usually say things towards me that are not just sexually abusive, but also targeted towards my race. And sometimes they think they're meaning it in a good way. And I'm like, dude, no. Like, why would you say that to me? Or a lot of times, the thing that annoys me the most is when someone describes my beauty as food. They're like, oh, that chocolate skin. Honey, come on. No, just say I'm a beautiful woman and I'll walk away and say thank you. That's it. Or because of the way different cultures and different women of colour have different body types, that is also capitalised on. And it's also remembering that just because your body looks a certain way, or just because you're a certain colour, just because your hair looks this way, doesn't mean that's the only thing that defines you. It's a big part of your identity, but don't let that be the only thing people capitalise on. Yeah, so I'm hoping that I see a lot more of women of colour in the psychological aspects of mental health and psychologists, just so that it can help with navigating that. And Black Women's Projects, we actually put in place a mental health scheme at the moment where a Black woman is actually your therapist, and that has been discounted for about £15. Because therapy sessions are really expensive. But we got a discount for £15 just to have that platform where you can go to someone if something is really, really troubling you or wrong, and you can talk to them about it. So, yeah, I don't know if I answered the question.
No, you did, absolutely. That was great. Thank you. Actually, I want to, just off the back of that, I'm not sure who is best out of the two of you to answer this question, but Yellow Door have a diversity and inclusion advocacy service. And I'd just love I don't know which one of you works with that, but if you wanted to expand on that and tell us a bit about that.
So neither Megan or I work for the Diversity and Inclusion Service. However, we can probably speak to you a bit regarding that, but also our domestic abuse team as well, which I'm the coordinator of. So with the domestic abuse team, we offer a variety of psychoeducational programs and awareness raising and one-to-one support, similar to that of diversity and inclusion, but they work with domestic and sexual abuse. And we work to develop support packages and plans that are catered to the individual based on their needs to improve their safety, predominantly, to ensure that they're able to attend professional appointments and understand what those professional appointments are about. So to be their voice within that, to explain things to them, to ensure that they're getting an equal service and to ensure that it's meeting their needs. So yeah, that's a bit about the diversity inclusion and domestic abuse. But we within Yellow Door, a lot of our services kind of overlap with one another. So we work together to ensure that all of our service users are getting the support package that they need at the right time for them.
I would say as well, I think our diversity and inclusion team, kind of the whole point of it was to ensure that people who would usually face barriers in accessing domestic and sexual abuse services were kind of represented. There were people there to help them with that. So we have kind of specific advocates for various needs. So we have a learning disabilities advocate, mental health. We have harmful practice workers as well. I think between the team, is it like 14 languages they speak? Yeah, so it kind of opens up if people with English not as their first language kind of want to access the service. We have people there to kind of support with that. So that was kind of the point of the service.
Great. I just also wanted to ask, to do with mental health and women's safety, if you guys in Yellow Door have seen an increase in the need for mental health support, particularly to do with all the recent news outlets to do with women's safety.
I think with our service users, there's always been a huge issue with mental health as well. So for the majority of the service users that come through to the domestic abuse team, they will have mental health issues as a result of their experiences. I think it has been exacerbated by recent events, and there's certainly been a lot of anger. It's been very triggering for a lot of people. It's brought up a lot of conflicting emotions that have been really challenging. So yeah, absolutely, I do think that there has been an impact. And in terms of support, with Yellow Door, our referrals have increased by 91%. Which means that I'm sure the media has had an impact on that because of the awareness that's been raised, and that's incredible because we're seeing more people come through for support. But at the same time, that's huge in terms of we need to support these people, and we need to make sure we've got the resources and able to do that, not just within Yellow Door, but across services. So, within mental health services as well, to ensure that, they're getting the support when they need it too, so.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you for that. So we are almost finished with our first half. The last question I want to ask, I kind of wanted to do a bit of a quick fire round. So I just wanted to go around the panel and just ask, what is one thing that you would do if you didn't have to think about your safety at night? So if we start going around this way again. So Jessica, if I could start with you.
I'd like to go out walking with my cane. Just me, no sighted guide, just me. Just walk around the block. That's all I want to do.
I'd really like to take the short way home every night instead of having to add 10 minutes to my journey as soon as winter hits and it's dark at 5 p.m.
I would like to be able to walk my dog at night.
When I was thinking about this one, I think the main thing for me was if I was kind of going on a date or something, not having to worry about giving somebody my live location, which is something that I do.
Something that I would like to do, if I was able to, if things were to improve, would be to maybe try going dancing, because it's something I have never tried before, and I don't feel as though I can leave my home to do that now. I doubt I'm good at it, but it's worth giving it a go.
I think mine's the same as everyone's. It's just to go on a nice late night walk and not message my friend and say, hey, can you come with me? I don't want you to come with me, I want to go by myself. And also, the day in, all my friends have my Snapchat location, and I don't know how I feel about that, but that's how it is at the moment, just so I feel safe when I go on dates, so.
I guess I could say the getting home thing again, but a lot of people have said that, so I'll try and branch out. Although, oh God, isn't it awful? We've all said the same thing. Probably mine would be to go out to drink or dance and not be doing that safety checking around to make sure that there isn't homophobic people there who are going to shout at me for being with my partner, or anybody's going to have a yell at me for going into what sometimes I get told is the wrong toilets for me, because apparently I sometimes look like a man. And just not having to do any safety checking in all the wonderful places that exist in the evenings and seem to be uniquely difficult for that.
Yeah, no, absolutely. All great answers. All, well, I don't know if great is the word to say. Important issues, definitely. That is great. So that's the end of our first half. So we now get to have a little 15-minute break if anyone wants to pop to the loo or get a drink. Just before we break up for the break, I just want to direct you guys. We have a prompt wall over there, just behind you all. The people waving, thanks for that. So basically there are just question prompts up on the wall, and we have post-it notes, and if you want to, you can just write your answers to them, and we want to create a really just great wall of answers. We also have a question box, so the second half is a Q&A. We thought it was much easier if we did it this way, because it means if you have a particular question you want to ask but don't feel fully comfortable asking it, putting your hand up, pop your question in the question box and we will ask it here to make it a lot easier. So they're just both by the wall over there, and we will see you in 15 minutes. Thank you. Hello, hello. Ooh. Hello, can everyone hear me? I'm aware I'm quite small, so I'll just stand up for a second. Hi, we are going to start our second half. This is our Q&A section. So you guys have popped some questions into the box. We have filtered through them, and now I'm going to ask them. That's how a Q&A works. I don't know why I described that. Okay, so our first question is, and this kind of is going to be a go around the panel. The first question is, who is a woman who inspires you, either in your own life or in the public eye? So if we start with Jessica again, if we go around that way.
Oh, thanks for asking. Sorry. Actually, it's just bear with me a minute, please. Marie Antoinette. Yeah, it's Marie Antoinette. And the reason, do you want an explanation or not?
Yeah, I'd love a reason.
All right, the reason it's Marie Antoinette is she, she was really treated badly by history, and she never said about the cakes. That was a load of nonsense. And okay, maybe she was naive with some of the things she did when her society was in real turmoil. But the way she was treated after the revolution, and even to the extent, just before she went to the execution, she had major sort of health issues, and she wanted a bit of space to sort herself out, and they denied her that. They wouldn't allow her to do that. And when she went to the block, she stood on the executioner's foot and she apologised to them. So that's why I admire Lady Antoinette.
Lovely. Okay, Lisa?
The women in my family inspire me a lot. My grandma inspires me. She's a working class northern woman at a time when not many women worked. She had to work all her life. She worked in factories. So she inspires me a lot, incredibly strong woman. My little sister inspires me a lot as well. She's a single mother bringing up a beautiful little boy to be a tiny little feminist at the minute, which is great. And yeah, some of my friends in politics, my friend Satvia Kaur, she's the current leader of the Labour group, inspires me every day. Brilliant woman. These girls here who work at Yellow Door doing absolutely incredible work to tackle domestic and sexual violence in the city. Really inspirational women.
Thank you.
I think I've been incredibly lucky to have worked with some amazing women throughout my career. Some of them are here this evening, including Megan. So professionally, lots and lots of women have inspired me, but also personally, I've got a sister that's 2 years younger than me. She's incredible. She's overcome a lot of personal issues herself with regard to domestic abuse and mental health, and she's incredibly resilient, incredibly strong, and does some amazing work. Also, my mum is a huge part of my life, so I think, yeah, there's a lot of very inspiring famous people with a platform, but for me, I kind of always think about the people that I see each day.
I would have to echo what Vicky has said. I work with some incredible women at Yellow Door. Everybody on the panel here today as well, it's really nice to meet you all, and I think you're all very inspirational. But if I had to pick one person, it would probably be my mum. She kind of brought us up as a single mother. She has always kind of instilled in me the importance of being able to rely on myself, and never to kind of be in a situation where I'm relying on anyone, especially a man. So that's really stuck with me. So my mum.
When I first heard this question, the woman who I thought about who would inspire me the most would be Marie Curie. Of course, because being a female scientist, of course, many decades ago too, that was something that did help to break the bias. And now, posthumously, of course, there is the charity too under her name. So she is just an excellent woman, and from what she has achieved with helping so many people in the scientific community. Someone else who I would also want to talk about is Juno Dawson. They wrote a book about their transition, because they are also a transgender woman. And this was the first book that I did read about someone who was like me. And when I came out to my mum, I gave her that book. She did not know what that word meant, so I just said, just read the book. You'll figure it out.
I have to say, it's the person who inspires me, well, my mom also, just because she is like the strongest person I know, and what she says to me always replays in my head, and she says, I don't give a damn what anyone thinks. And I love that, and I live by that, and I love women who also live by that, because forget everyone else, just do you.
I panicked when I heard this question because I don't have an answer. And as we've gone around, I've had a little think about why it is I don't have an answer. And that's because I don't really like putting inspiration on somebody, because it can be a bit of a burden, especially to imagine that you have to kind of never fail and that person has to be kind of perfect and do everything right and you're going to be inspired by them. So I guess I get a lot of the things we've talked about around this table from all the people around me who get to be whole and messy and fuck things up all the time, and I love them for that, rather than just looking to one person as a single inspiration.
I love that. That's great. Thank you for all those responses. So our second question, again, it's a general one. So our question is, we're seeing some progress on acceptance of girls doing boy things. How can we encourage teaching our boys to feel more comfortable with more feminine traits in themselves? And maybe if I turn first, this is when I do a little choosing. Maybe if I turn first to Megan to answer that question. Okay, it's quite a long one, sorry, okay. We're seeing some progress on acceptance of girls doing boy things. How can we encourage teaching our boys to feel more comfortable with more feminine traits in themselves?
That's a really good question. I think we should be kind of getting rid of labelling anything as a certain gender thing. I think especially when it comes to kind of certain emotions, I know like working with boys, you know, the way that they are kind of encouraged or allowed to express certain emotions like anger is certainly more acceptable than how kind of girls or women might want to kind of express those emotions. I think we need to make it, you know, acceptable for people to feel all the feelings, with none of them being labelled as good or bad or particularly male or female, just that actually we, you know, if you want to do things that are kind of labelled girly, that's okay. And you know, it doesn't make them a girl, or it doesn't kind of make them any less of a man. And we talk a lot with the boys as well about kind of vulnerability being a real strength. And actually when one boy sort of like says something that maybe isn't very boyish or manly, but others will. So I guess, yeah, making it just okay and not making a big deal out of it, I suppose.
Yeah, no, definitely. I think the whole thing with attaching genders to emotions, like with, I know there's the classic, oh, boys don't cry, or, you know, you're a girl if you cry. It's such a ridiculous thing, like saying it now. But I think definitely if we detach genders from emotions, that it means that anyone can feel things. And also when it comes back to mental health, it means that, you know, we can reduce toxic masculinity and we can let men cry and feel their emotions and talk about their emotions and really just help people be open, definitely. So, oh yeah, go ahead.
I think the biggest problem with that is that femininity is used as a weakness. And men need to realize that being feminine is being strong, and it's being great, and it's being powerful. So if you want to paint your nose pink, paint your nose pink. You want to wear eyeliner? Wear your eyeliner. Be you, because femininity is great. So yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah, no, it's absolutely the thing. It's kind of like masculine strong, feminine's weak, and it's like, no, we're so strong. We are so strong. So I'm now going to turn to our direct questions. So my first one goes to Yellow Door, and maybe the two of you can choose who's best to answer this. This is a very long question, so prepare. So the question is, I work with 16 to 19-year-olds in care. Most of the girls I work with are at high risk of CSE, which I think is child sexual abuse, yes. And all of them have very stereotypical gender views. Most of these young people have been out of formal education for a long time, so don't have access to positive role models. What resources are out there to help change these mindsets? We refer to Yellow Door, but what do you think could be implemented to fix this massive gap?
Okay, so we, as the STAR project, as well as working in schools and colleges and that kind of thing, we can also work in other kind of provisions where they're working with young people. If they haven't been having those conversations from kind of an early age and kind of ongoing, because I think as well, this is something that needs to be taught regularly, and if they've missed out on those vital messages throughout their kind of schooling, if that's, you know, something that they've not been able to kind of access, it's having those conversations. We can go in. I mean, the STAR project work in those kinds of places as well, so we'd be happy to go in and deliver some kind of specific work around CSE and that kind of thing. And yeah, just I think there's a real risk of making it a one-off kind of thing. It needs to be a message that is constantly kind of delivered to young people, young women especially. And I know, Vicky, you talk a lot about kind of rights and responsibilities and relationships. And
we also have one of our most popular programmes that the domestic abuse team run is our pattern changing programme, and that can be for any woman from the age 16 and over, and that goes into healthy relationships, unhealthy relationships, recognising the red flags and warning signs, but also looking at the individual as well, and patterns that maybe they've developed throughout the course of their life that aren't serving them so well now. So things like building up assertiveness, boundary setting, confidence, communication skills and things like that, which are going to be all of the things that help to reduce the risk of abusive relationships and you know, risky choices in the future. But I think in terms of resources as well for people that maybe don't want to engage or there's barriers to them engaging, we're on our phones all the time, you know, we're on the internet all the time using social media. So it's kind of looking into what's available there as well. So there are a lot of good websites. I'm not going to reel them all off now because you won't remember them. But if you need to come and speak to us or whatever, we can point you in the right direction for that and resources that can be accessed that way too.
Fab, thank you for that. So the next question goes to Levi. So the question is, how can you be an effective ally or start actively supporting your LGBTQ plus friends/family?
I'd say the biggest thing that you do need to do, which my mum also had to do 5 years ago when I came out, is to just ask questions, because it's very rare that you're going to hurt me or any other LGBT person just by asking innocent questions. But then, of course, that means the second most important thing is to listen. And listen really hard, because a lot of questions are repeated many, many times about things like which bathroom you should go to. And really, that's the most important thing I'd say that does need to stop. So you need to listen to questions that have already been asked, and then, of course, just going forward, take that information with yourself to interact with that person you know differently, or the way they want to be treated.
Yeah, and I guess it's also engaging with resources around you. Like you said, with in this media day and age, there are so many resources around us that we can access. So doing your own research and engaging with that is definitely key as well, I think. Great, thank you. And that was a great answer. God, we're speeding through these questions. So the next one is to Jessica. So it's about spectrum. So the question is, how important is the intertwining of social causes, e.g. disability and feminism? I repeat that. So it's, how important is the intertwining of social causes, e.g. disability and feminism?
I need to go back to the social model, really, and say, basically, we all can identify with different groups, yeah, but when it comes down to it, we all face barriers, and those barriers can be, as I said, the attitudes that people have towards us, the basically the institutions that are out there that also cause problems for us, and the environmental and that. I'm not too sure I've answered your question, because I'm not too sure I understood it. Could you?
So it's, how important is the intertwining of social causes? So how important is the intertwining of disability and feminism?
Well, in relation to what goes on within Spectrum, okay, it's central to what we do, okay? And in relation to myself, I'm on a journey to understand the issues of feminism and to understand the issues of gender. I spend most of my time at work sometimes listening to Woman's Hour. Okay, Woman's Hour is really important, and I've learned all sorts of things, okay. I've also listened to some debates on feminism in relation to Kathleen Stott, who basically was the lecturer who lost a job because of the argument of transgender issues and that sort of thing. So it's fundamental, really. I'm not too sure I understood that.
Great, thank you. Within this question, I'd actually like to open it up a bit, because the question is asking about how important is the intertwining of social causes, and they also say also race, LGBTQ+, class, etc. I'd like to turn to Lizzie, actually, and maybe ask how important is the intertwining of the LGBTQ+, and feminism, how important is like representation and that relationship?
Yeah, absolutely. I also just want to say, and just for clarification on what we've just heard from Jessica, that Kathleen Stott did not lose her job because of her argument. She quit. I'm happy to talk to anyone about that further afterwards as well. I feel quite strongly about that. The intertwining of feminism with sexuality issues, with disability, race, class, these are things we often hold together when we're talking about intersectionality, and the value of that is just kind of incalculable. The When we were talking earlier about your experience of kind of having people at the bar being really creepy and horrible to you, and where that came from as well, you see things like bisexual women experience higher rates of sexual violence, are more likely to be sexualized because of their sexuality and assumed to be available for men in incredibly counterintuitive ways, given that they're expressing a desire for men and women or more. And we can kind of explore this really productively when we think about the ways in which women are assumed to be available for men, the ways in which women are assumed to not have a lot of agency, the ways in which women are assumed to be passive or easily manipulated, and how this kind of gets even more complicated and calcified, perhaps, when we add in other things like the assumption of perversity, which sometimes goes along with not being heterosexual, or the assumption of being angry with not presenting in a typically feminine way. So those kind of intersections between not doing your gender right or not doing your sexuality right, or not having maybe certain kinds of class knowledge or ways of presenting yourself, all intertwine with particular ideals about being a woman and make all of those experiences often harder and certainly riskier as well. The statistics on the rates of violence and isolation and lots of miserable, horrible things that I don't really want to list, but I think we all kind of are aware of here, and how that intersects with those positions is really striking.
Yeah, definitely. Thank you for that. That was a great answer. So, I got a bit messy in my notes. But our next question is to Lisa. So the question is, how engaged in women's safety and rights are politicians generally?
I think there is a growing kind of not understanding, but a growing theme of politicians saying, yes, we understand it's a problem, but not really understanding on a fundamental level what the problem is. So a lot of the time they'll say, well, we will tackle women's safety, we'll put CCTV up, or we'll put more police on the streets. Or, you know, this kind of crime and safety, and actually the issues with women's safety are a lot more fundamental than that. It's kind of like trying to fill a bath up when the plug's not in, you know. It goes back to the gender issues that we've all discussed this evening, these kind of structural issues. It also, you know, it's not just about whether there's CCTV or, you know, whether you can walk home at night. It's about whether women have access to housing. If they're in a violent relationship, one of the biggest barriers is, where am I going to live if I leave? You know, it goes back to whether they're going to be able to have a job where they can support themselves, well-paid work, you know, all of these kind of fundamental things. And I think there isn't quite the understanding amongst most politicians that those things are the issues, not just CCTV and police and all the rest of it.
Yeah, definitely. I wanted to just pick up on that, your point about the putting more police on the streets. And I don't know, this was a few months ago now, but when the whole spiking thing was going on, definitely, Abiola and Levi, you might be more aware of this. I definitely am as a university student. One of the initiatives that they are potentially going to bring in was to have police officers go into clubs and kind of be keeping an eye. And it was like, is that a good idea? And I don't know, maybe Abiola, if I turn to you, kind of, I don't know if you heard about this, but how that would make you feel if you knew that there were these kind of plainclothes police officers in the club kind of looking out for you.
That wasn't even like my problem with it. It's just, how would that even work? It's dark in a club and there's like a lot of people in a compact area. I don't know what kind of eyes they think they have, sorry. But I don't know how that would have worked. But
Yeah, fair. Yeah, of course you can, yeah.
So I think it's quite a privileged position to have the thought or understanding that the police are there to personally keep you safe. There are a lot of groups for which that's not true. And this isn't a new thing. This goes back many, many years. I grew up in the Northeast, where we have a kind of skepticism about police keeping us safe that goes back to like miners' strikes, working class communities in the 80s and 90s, kind of facing quite a lot of police brutality. So yeah, I think it kind of, I understand why people think that is the solution, but it does come from a position where you've grown up always thinking the police are there to keep me safe, which, as we've seen recently, isn't the case for everyone.
No, definitely. And it's definitely a privileged position to think that the police will keep you safe. And I think a lot with the recent attacks on women, people have, I don't know how to phrase this, they've kind of had their eyes opened to the fact that police aren't there to keep a lot of people safe, and which is good in some sense, but also people have been shouting about that for years, and only now that they are starting to listen, which is kind of a bit like, oh, come on, like we've been saying this for so long. So it's definitely a privileged position to think that initiatives like that are good and that the police are there to keep you safe, definitely. Great, so I'll turn to our next question. So this one's for Lizzie. So the question is, sometimes queer, feminist, race, etc. academic writing feels inaccessible. Can you recommend any resources for starting to engage with this?
Yes, it can. It's horrible sometimes. There's a couple of really good books that I recommend to loads of people. They are both by the same people, and they are graphic guides, so they are illustrated. Everyone loves a picture. They're both by Meg John Barker with, I think Julia Scheel is the illustrator. There's Queer, a graphic guide, and Gender, a graphic guide. Oh! Feedback. And they're very accessible. They flag for you loads of those big writers who are horribly inaccessible. They give you little tidbits about what their kind of key message is, and it gives you a way into reading other stuff, which can be really, really helpful.
Fab, those sound great. Great, okay, so we're on to our next question. This is for Abiola. So the question is, what advice can you give to someone looking to educate themselves on issues experienced by women of colour?
Oh gosh, that is a big one. I think the best place to actually learn from it, just because the times are always changing, and the way we experience problems is changing as well. It's more, racism in Britain is very subtle. It's more like microaggressions. So it's saying things like, oh, you smell funny today. It's things like that. So it's just learning what to do in situations like that. And honestly, social media is actually a really good platform to actually learn a lot. I'm actually learning a lot from TikTok about black women, weirdly enough. Just honestly, social media and reading books. I've currently started reading Becoming by Michelle Obama. And that's actually really helped me to understand her role as a woman in general in society, but also as a black woman and what that looks like. So books like that. There's another book that I've read. This is mainly more about like Nigeria and what goes on there a little bit more, but it's called The Girl with the Loudian Voice. It's on Oprah's Top Picks, actually. And it's great to talk about how not just women of colour experience abuse, but also from a really young age, and what that looks like when they don't really understand what is happening to them, and that affects them in later years in life, and how they deal with that.
Great, thank you. So our next question is a general one. So it is, apart from calling out and challenging unacceptable behaviour, what else can men do to promote women's rights, and how do we engage them? I'll repeat that just so we can get your heads. So it's apart from calling out and challenging unacceptable behaviour, what else can men do to promote women's rights, and how do we engage them? So, Lisa, let me turn to you.
I think definitely, like in a professional sense, especially in politics, I think letting us speak and listening when we say this is a problem, this isn't okay, in like the professional world, in the sense of meetings and stuff, the worst thing is when you say something and nobody listens, and then a man says something, the exact same thing 5 minutes later, and then everyone goes, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. So I think men could probably say, you know, Lisa said this, did everyone hear what they said? And just really advocate for women in the room, because we can have as many women in the room as we want, but if they're not being listened to and they're not being heard, then it's not helpful. So I think, yeah, like advocating for the women that are in the room around you is really important.
Yeah, absolutely. I've also got my kind of own question from that. Obviously, when things are happening with the women disappearing, like Sarah Everard, Sabina Nessa and Ashley Murphy, there was a whole narrative of not all men. And it was a whole thing kind of being like, oh, but, you know, it's only the bad ones. And yeah, I kind of like to get your opinions on the not all men narrative and what you think of it, because I definitely have an opinion, and I'd like to get yours. So, Meg, I might turn to you.
So I feel like this is probably quite a cliche thing to say, and we hear it all the time as well, but it's not all men, but it literally is all women. All of my friends have had some kind of unwanted sexual experience or experience of domestic abuse. And I just find it interesting that when you have these conversations with men, well, it's not me, it's not my friends. And it's like, well, it must be some of them. And actually when what we would call that kind of lower level stuff, I hate calling it that because none of it should be low level. But, you know, like misogynistic jokes and kind of, you know, group chats and you know, horrible images sent and stuff, like calling it out within your friends, not just when something big is happening in the media, or, you know, when you're kind of directly asked about it. It's actually like constantly calling it out when you see it within your friends. I keep talking about being an active bystander, but I really think that is the key, and it doesn't always have to be direct. So there's kind of 5 different ways that you can kind of intervene, and it's about, you know, not assuming that somebody else will say something or do something. And if you don't feel comfortable directly calling it out, delegate to somebody else, distract, check if the person's okay, but just get involved in some way, you know. And also stop with the whataboutery. If people are talking about women, we don't need to compare it to men. That's an issue on its own, and we don't need to do that.
Here. But also I think it's really important that men commit themselves to learning. They don't know what it's like to be a woman, so speak to us, learn from us, and yeah, use your resources, like look into this at a deeper level, because I think, you know, unfortunately, for a lot of men, they may hold sort of misogynistic views, and values perhaps that maybe they don't even recognise as being misogynistic. And it's about being able to learn and challenge themselves on things as well as then being able to challenge other people. So checking in with yourself. Okay, what do I think about this? What have I been taught about this? Have I been conditioned in a certain way, you know, that maybe I haven't even thought about up until this point now, but this is impactful. And if I make those positive changes, then I can help others to do that and to recognise that too. So, yeah, it's very much, you know, a systemic, a huge thing, what we're discussing here, and it's going to take a lot of time. But without that commitment, we're not going to get there. So, yeah.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's the thing, it's on checking your privilege, men checking their privilege, but it's also within educating yourself, it's women can't be constantly having to be the educators in this. Like I said earlier, with so much media around us now, there are the resources around you. So I think a big thing is, yeah, men looking around and looking for resources, because women shouldn't be the educators on this, because that's too much to do. That's too much to bear. Definitely. Did anyone else want to say anything on not all men? Oh yeah, go ahead.
Thank you. I maybe have a slightly different answer, and I really agree with everything you said, actually. But my immediate response to what can men do beyond speaking up for women was dismantle the gender binary. destroy all assumptions about what gender should be and what you should do according to your sex. And that works for everyone.
Lovely. No, definitely, absolutely. Great. So, oh yes, of course.
Thank you. As I indicated earlier on, okay, Jessica was born 4 years ago, okay. So I've spent many, many years as a male, okay. And what takes place, and I've witnessed this, sort of observing it from Jessica's point of view now, we get conditioned into behaving in a certain way. I'm not saying it's acceptable, but it is part of a conditioning process. It's part of conforming. It's part of basically, whether you're just in a group and like somebody whistles, okay, and you know it's wrong, but you don't say anything about it, yeah, because you're basically singled out within the group. So you conform. And you even use a language, okay, which is acceptable, which you don't agree with, but you still conform. Because to stand out, okay, it can be really difficult. And, I've done that for many, many years. I knew it was wrong, okay. I was uncomfortable with it, but I knew that to stand out and to say this is not acceptable, okay, basically just meant you were penalised. So part of the problem, I feel, is that men learn a certain way of behaving which is confirmed right the way through society. And one of the ways that we're going to change this would need to be basically starting off at schools when you're very young. I really struggle to see how, with a large percentage of men, okay, unless there's a massive publicity process, how it's going to happen, okay? Because you just conform. It's not acceptable, but you just conform. Sorry.
Thank you for that, definitely. And yeah, as we've kind of said throughout this panel, education is so key to this issue, 100%. So our next question, and actually I think maybe our final, is this one. It's, growing up, my mother would tell me not to go out alone at night. What advice or what would you say to your daughter if you had one? I'm going to go to Abiola.
Unfortunately, I think I would say the same thing, just because I want my daughter to be safe. Yeah, it's just, I would tell her why that is and how I hope things would change, and that she shouldn't be scared that because of a woman she's going to be put down or anything's going to happen, but just to be on the safe side and just to protect yourself. At the moment, that is what we have to do. And it's not right, but that's just how the world is at the moment.
Lisa, if I come to you.
Yeah, I mean, don't go out at night is obviously probably something we've all been told, but I think, like we've seen recently, people going out at daytime and being murdered, women being murdered, so it's really difficult. Yeah, as Abiola said, I'd probably have to say similar things, but, I'm a big advocate. I do martial arts myself, so definitely do martial arts, If someone wants to hurt you, they're probably going to hurt you, but at least give a good fight. And I think being a martial artist as well and doing martial arts kind of just, women's safety aside, gives you a certain confidence that I think is really healthy for women to do. So yeah, I'd definitely shove them into kickboxing as soon as they could kick and punch.
Yeah, nice. I guess within kind of that teaching your daughter, if you had one, question is kind of what positives would you teach them about kind of women and feminism and women's safety? Vicky, if I come to you. So positives that you just teach them and you tell them kind of about women, feminism, and stuff to do with that.
I think I would just try and reinforce every single day that we are equal. We may not be equal in terms of the way that we are, things are at the moment. Unfortunately, statistically, we are not. But that's what we should be striving for, and that they are of equal value and of equal worth. And that's really, really important. But also, I think it's about ensuring that girls have the tools, have the assertiveness skills, are able to say no, are able to communicate effectively, don't feel too scared to communicate effectively, to express themselves, to be themselves, and to be heard as well. I think that's something that we're not taught, and actually, like men, unfortunately, are conditioned, and there's toxic masculinity. With girls, we're conditioned a lot of the time to not have a voice or not rock the boat or be a peacemaker, and to look after everybody else and not put ourselves first. So I think there's a lot in terms of the tools that we need as well to get there, but just to keep striving for that equality.
Yeah, definitely. Just kind of keep pushing on. Levi, did you have any answer to that question?
Really, I only agree with everything that has been said just to answer this question. So I don't think there's really anything else I can contribute to it myself, but thank you.
Yeah, absolutely fair. So we have basically come to the end of the whole evening. But I had a final question just to finish. Kind of just like to go around and ask just a final message that you'd like to send out. So something that you really believe in or you really believe needs to change. And in that, if you're from an organisation, if there's any publicising you want to put out whilst we go around. So again, I'll kind of go around the way we've gone before. So just any messages that you want to send out, something that you really believe needs to change, something that you just really believe in, or a positive, just kind of one final message. Yeah, of course. Lisa, do you want to begin?
I think I spoke about it a bit tonight, but I'd really encourage any of you to, get involved in politics or, stand up. Don't be afraid of going for positions of leadership. You're all, I'm sure, a lot more capable than you think you are. If it's not politics, I'm sure you'll be able to get involved in something else and really stand your ground. I think, just going back to the last question as well, positive is that, there are so many great women out there, and it's comes with its downfalls, but it's great to be a part of, that tribe and all of these fantastic women leaders.
So for me, International Women's Day is one of my favourite days of the year. It means a great deal to me. I'm very proud to be a woman. Despite all of its challenges, I think it's fantastic. I've had an amazing time here tonight, so thank you for having me. But also, if you have sort of been inspired by anything that Megan and I have said from Yellow Door, then, do reach out to us. We have a fantastic volunteering service. I'm looking over there because they're here. So we're always looking for people to come and join us. And I think that's it really. I think for me, it's just, I keep going back to it, it's systemic change. This is a huge commitment. It's going to take time, but I've been really heartwarmed today, sort of within, looking on social media at what's going on within the city and locally. And I think it's been amazing. Lots of people rallying around and really showing their support. So that's been great. Thank you.
I would just kind of echo what Vicky has said. We're always kind of interested in people getting involved with the work we do at Yellow Door, but also just to sort of acknowledge that the conversations that we've had here this evening may have brought some stuff up for some people. We have a range of services at Yellow Door, including kind of advocacy and therapeutic services. If you have, stuff has come up for you this evening and you're feeling like you need to speak to somebody, please kind of get in touch with us. We're here to help. We have a helpline on a Wednesday as well. So yeah, please do kind of get in touch. We're here to help and support people. And thank you for having us. We've had a really nice time.
Three things. First thing is, Black Women's Projects is actually having a conference on the 19th of March called What Do You Want From Me? And it's a conference set up to help Black women from transferring from university to professional life. And we have a couple of speakers come in, and we have a panel as well. We have a mental health advocate and a psychologist also coming to help with that, helping Black women with that transition. Sorry, I forgot what I was going to say now. Just flew out my head. I think what I would want to say to all my women out there is, number one thing is just love yourself. I think a lot of women nowadays, we just don't love ourselves enough. We don't give ourselves enough credit as we should. We are so fine, but we downplay it so much. Love yourself. And once you love yourself, you can always show other people love. And honestly, stand up for your women, because we've got to stick together, break down the barriers. And last thing, BWP slogan, be well, do well, lead well.
I was struck by the fact this is International Women's Day, but it used to be International Working Women's Day, which grew out of trade union movements and women banding together to fight together to fix their living conditions, their working conditions. And I guess what I would like to stress, and the thing that I really care about, is coming together with people, recognising what we can do together collectively, and acknowledging and celebrating all the diversity of ways which we might do gender, and really looking to community and diversity and embracing all of that, and remembering that gender can be a trap, but it can also be incredibly liberating.
Hello, I'm Emma. I'm just supporting Jessica today. So I'm going to tell you a little bit more about Spectrum. So Spectrum is a user-led organisation run and controlled by disabled people, and we're all about breaking down those barriers and promoting equality and choice and control, because we should all have choice and control, but some people have those barriers. So I'd just like to thank you for letting us be here and representing Spectrum today, and just let you know that we have a navigation service, and we're linked up with SoLinked, which again is another partnership. But basically, if you need to know information about where to go, who to speak to, we've got a helpline, and the website's got so many resources of information. And Spectrum's also the hate crime reporting agency as well, which you guys, Yellow Door as well. So if you needed to report a crime, and gender is a protective characteristic, you are protected as a female or a female identified person. And if that ever went to the stage where it was identified as a crime, you will be supported by loads of different community organisations in Southampton, because there's so many, and it would be amazing if everyone was here, but you've just got a snippet of all of us. So yeah, thank you again for having us, and thanks.
So just before we go, I'm probably just going to do a little stand-up so you will see me, because I'm only 5'3". I just want to do a few thanks. So first of all, I'd like to give a big thanks to Metrics. If we can give them a round of applause. They have been so amazing, letting us organise this in such short notice. They've been so accommodating, so thank you. Next, I want to thank the team of organisers behind this. So I want to thank Jem, Abby, Amy, Bitsy, Chloe, Ellen, Emily Litchfield, Emily Lanham, Imi, Meg and Savina. Thank you, guys. I also want to thank our tech support, Molly, Josh and George. You are absolute angels. We literally couldn't have done any of this without you. So, yeah, big round of applause for you. Thank you. And Abby. Sorry. Also, just want to give a shout out to all the societies and charities that have shared our social media pages and come out and supported us. Yeah, you guys are amazing. Thank you. I also want to thank our panellists, of course. Meg, Vicky, Abiola, Jessica, Lisa, Levi and Lizzie. Thank you guys for getting involved in this. Literally, you have all been incredible. So, yeah, I cannot thank you enough. Thank you. And finally, before Bitsy steals the microphone from me, I just want to thank all of you. Literally, I think we have about 140 people altogether, either here or on the live stream. Hi again. Thank you so much for turning up and showing up for International Women's Day, supporting us, supporting this conversation, which continues to be so important. Your support is, well, words can't even describe. So thank you so much for being here. Yes, big applause to all of you.
And probably the biggest applause of the night, probably for Beth Mitchell, who this wouldn't have happened without. She very much recognises and checks her privilege as a cis white woman and makes it her top priority to lift the voices of the underrepresented members of society. And I love you. Thank you.
Also, this is the last thing. I will let you go after this, I promise. But anyone who's here, anyone on the live stream or who couldn't make it, the live stream is obviously recorded now, but it will be put onto our Facebook event as well afterwards. So if you wish to watch this again or wish to share it with anyone you know, it will be on our Facebook event. I'm trying to remember what it's called. Reclaim the Streets, Southampton? I'm being nodded at, cool. So if you wish to watch this again or share it with anyone, it will be on that event page. And that's it from us. So we are still here for a little bit if you have any questions or want to just come and chat. We will be around here for a little bit till 11, I'm being told. So yeah, we'll be around to chat if you want to. And again, a huge thank you so much to all of you for coming out and supporting International Women's Day. Thank you.